Keep your goals secret. Master Focus, Discipline, and Silent Success. Published by the Growth Mind Audiobook. Introduction. There is a point in almost every worthwhile goal when nobody can see what you are doing. You may have decided to change your career, improve your health, learn a difficult skill, build something of your own, become financially independent, or simply become more disciplined. In the beginning, the idea feels exciting. You imagine the person you could become. Sometimes you even tell people about it. Then reality begins. The work becomes repetitive. Progress becomes difficult to measure. Some days you question whether you are moving forward at all. And because there is nothing impressive to show yet, you may feel tempted to talk about the goal again just to remind yourself and everyone else that you are still trying. This is where keeping a goal private can change everything. When you stop explaining what you are going to do, you are left with a much simpler question. Are you actually going to do it? There is no audience to impress and no praise to maintain. If the plan changes, you can change it. If you make a mistake, you can learn from it without feeling embarrassed. If progress takes longer than expected, you do not have to defend the timeline to anyone. Privacy gives unfinished work room to breathe, but this is not an argument for hiding your entire life or refusing useful advice. Some goals require teachers, partners, honest feedback, and people you trust. The point is to become intentional about what you share, when you share it, and why. More importantly, this audiobook is not about becoming silent for the sake of being silent. It is about shifting your attention from being seen to becoming capable. You will learn how to protect your attention, strengthen discipline, replace unreliable motivation with useful systems, handle criticism, survive periods of being misunderstood, learn from failure, and patiently build a stronger version of yourself. Because real progress often looks ordinary while it is happening, it is the decision to begin again tomorrow. It is finishing the task nobody knows you completed. It is choosing the long-term result over today's comfort. It is keeping a promise you made to yourself when nobody else was listening. So keep the important things close. Work without needing constant confirmation. Let your progress develop before you display it. You do not have to announce who you are becoming. Give yourself enough time to become that person. Chapter 1. Conceal the plan and protect the mission. There is a difference between having a goal and constantly talking about having a goal. One is an act of commitment. The other can become a performance. You can spend an evening explaining the business you want to build, the body you want to create, the skill you want to master, or the life you want to change. And for a few hours you may feel as though something has already happened. People encourage you. They tell you that you can do it. They imagine your future with you. You walk away feeling energized, but the next morning, the actual work is still waiting. That is the trap. An unfinished goal is vulnerable. Before it becomes a result, it exists mainly as an idea inside your mind. Once you expose that idea to everyone around you, you also expose it to their expectations, doubts, assumptions, comparisons, and advice. Suddenly, your private objective can become a public conversation. Instead of simply building, you begin explaining why you chose the goal, when you expect to achieve it, how you plan to do it, and whether you are still on schedule. That mental shift matters. Imagine trying to construct a house while allowing a crowd to walk through the foundation every morning. Some people would tell you where the walls should go. Others would question the design. Someone would complain that construction is taking too long. Another person would suggest a completely different blueprint. Even if every opinion came from good intentions, the constant interference would make the work harder. Your attention can be treated the same way. When you keep an important goal reasonably private, you create a protected space where the idea can develop. You can test different approaches without having to defend every experiment. You can change direction without announcing that your original plan failed. You can make mistakes without turning them into public events. Most importantly, you can concentrate on the next action instead of managing other people's expectations. This does not mean you should reject everyone. Some goals become stronger through honest feedback, skilled mentors, trusted friends, or experienced professionals. Privacy is not isolation, it is selectivity. Share what needs to be shared with people who can genuinely contribute and stop turning every ambition into a public announcement. There is another reason to protect your plans. Premature recognition can become surprisingly satisfying. When people hear about your ambition, they may immediately treat you as if you have already begun the transformation. You're going to do something great. You're finally taking things seriously. I know you'll succeed. Those words can feel good, but encouragement is not accomplishment. Your mind can sometimes confuse the emotional experience of being recognized for intention with the satisfaction that should come from completion. You receive a small psychological reward before you have paid the full price. The answer is simple but not always easy. Move the reward from talking to doing. Instead of telling 5 people what you are about to accomplish, spend that time completing one meaningful task. Instead of explaining your new routine, follow it for 30 days. Instead of announcing that you are going to become more disciplined, prove it through the small decisions nobody sees. Let your actions accumulate privately. There is strength in having a mission that does not require constant commentary. You become freer to adjust, experiment, fail, recover, and continue. You stop performing certainty and start developing competence. Think of your goal as something you are growing rather than something you are advertising. A tree does not become stronger because people stand around discussing its potential. Its strength comes from what happens quietly, roots expanding, branches developing, seasons passing. Your early work can be the same. Protect the beginning. Guard your attention. Choose carefully who gets access to the unfinished version of your plans. Then put your energy where it can actually change your life, into the work. Eventually, you may have something worth showing. Until then, you do not need to convince anyone. You need to build. Chapter 2. Break free from the need for approval. Once you stop announcing every goal, something uncomfortable can happen. You begin to notice how much of your motivation was connected to other people's reactions. Maybe you wanted someone to say, "That is a great idea." Maybe you wanted your family to believe in you. Maybe you wanted friends to see you as ambitious, disciplined, successful, or different. There is nothing wrong with wanting encouragement. Humans naturally respond to recognition. The problem begins when recognition becomes necessary. If nobody approves of the path you have chosen, would you still walk it? That question can reveal more than 100 motivational speeches. Think about how often people make decisions based on an invisible audience. They choose a career partly because it sounds impressive. They announce a new habit because they want others to notice. They share an achievement because the reaction makes the achievement feel more real. Sometimes, without realizing it, they are not building a life. They are building an image of a life. That distinction matters. An image requires an audience. A meaningful life does not. When your goals depend heavily on approval, your direction becomes vulnerable. One person's doubt can make you hesitate. One negative comment can make you question yourself. A lack of attention can make you wonder whether the effort is worth continuing. Your motivation rises and falls according to reactions you cannot control. The solution is not to stop listening to everyone. It is to stop giving everyone authority over your decisions. Start developing an internal standard. Decide what matters to you before asking what matters to other people. Define the kind of person you want to become. Decide what behaviors would prove that you are moving in that direction. Then measure yourself against those standards instead of constantly checking the room for approval. For example, suppose you decide to become more disciplined. You do not need someone to congratulate you every time you wake up early, finish a difficult task, or resist an unnecessary distraction. The evidence is in your behavior. You showed up. You kept the commitment. You did what you said you would do. That is where genuine confidence begins. Confidence built on compliments is fragile because compliments can disappear. Confidence built on evidence is different. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, you add another piece of evidence. Every difficult decision you handle well becomes another piece. Every time you continue after disappointment, you strengthen the belief that you can trust yourself. This creates a powerful shift. Instead of asking, "Do people believe I can succeed?" you begin asking, "What am I doing today that makes success more likely?" That question puts you back in control. There will still be moments when criticism hurts. There will still be people whose opinions matter deeply to you. This is not about becoming emotionally numb. It is about learning to separate emotional reactions from useful information. Someone can disagree with you without determining your future. Someone can doubt you without proving you are wrong. Learn to listen without surrendering your direction. You should also become careful with the temptation to prove people wrong. At first, it can feel powerful. Someone doubts you and suddenly you want to succeed just to make them regret it. But revenge is an unstable fuel. Eventually, you become tired of organizing your life around people you claim not to care about. Build for something better. Build because the work matters to you. Build because the person you are becoming matters to you. Build because you want greater capability, greater freedom, deeper self-respect, or a life that reflects your own values. The less you need applause, the more freely you can work. And once you stop spending your energy trying to be seen, you discover how much energy has been leaking into distractions. That is where the next challenge begins. You must take back control of your attention. Chapter 3. Seize your attention before distraction steals it. Once you stop depending on approval, you gain something valuable, mental space. But that space can disappear quickly if you do not protect it. You can know exactly what you want, genuinely care about your goal, and still make very little progress because your attention is constantly being pulled in different directions. This is one of the quiet problems of modern life. Most people do not deliberately choose to lose an hour. They lose 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and another 20 minutes somewhere else. A notification interrupts a thought. A message leads to a conversation. A short visit to social media becomes a long scroll. A quick video becomes another video and another. None of these moments seems important on its own. Together, they can consume the mental space your most important work requires. Your attention is being spent whether you are directing it or not. So begin treating attention as something you manage, not something that simply happens to you. The first step is to identify where your attention goes when you are not consciously choosing. Pay attention to the moments when you reach for your phone without a reason. Notice which conversations repeatedly leave you distracted. Observe what happens when difficult work becomes uncomfortable. Sometimes the distraction is not the problem itself. Sometimes it is your escape from the discomfort of concentrating. That distinction is important. You may believe you have a focus problem when you actually have an avoidance habit. The moment a task becomes mentally demanding, you search for something easier. Checking a message feels easier than solving the difficult problem in front of you. Watching something entertaining feels easier than sitting with uncertainty. Distraction becomes a convenient exit. The answer is not to eliminate every enjoyable activity. The answer is to stop allowing easy stimulation to make every demanding task feel unbearable. Create friction around your biggest distractions. Put your phone farther away when you need uninterrupted work. Turn off unnecessary alerts. Keep distracting websites out of immediate reach. Decide when you will check messages instead of checking them every time they appear. Make your environment support the behavior you want. Then create a clear starting point for important work. Do not tell yourself, "I will focus more today." That is too vague. Decide what you will work on, when you will begin, and what completion looks like. A specific commitment gives your attention somewhere to go. You can also train yourself to stay with one task longer than feels comfortable. When the urge to switch appears, do not obey it immediately. Notice it. Let the urge exist without turning it into an action. Return to the task. This is how concentration becomes stronger. Focus is not the absence of distraction. It is the ability to notice distraction without automatically following it. There is another form of distraction that deserves attention. Other people's priorities. Someone else's urgency can easily become your emergency. Their opinions, complaints, ambitions, and schedules can fill your day until you have little energy left for your own mission. Learn to say no without creating a dramatic explanation. You do not have to respond immediately to every message. You do not have to participate in every conversation. You do not have to be available every moment simply because technology makes you reachable. Protect your best mental hours for work that moves your life forward. The goal is not to become obsessed with productivity. It is to become intentional. Rest when you need rest. Spend time with people you value. Enjoy your life. But make sure your important priorities receive some of your best attention rather than whatever remains after everything else has taken its share. Eventually, when you remove enough noise, something interesting happens. Your mind becomes quieter. Thoughts that were buried under constant stimulation begin to surface. Questions you avoided become harder to ignore. You begin hearing yourself again. And that leads to the next step, learning how to use silence instead of running from it. Chapter 4. Enter silence and train your mind. When you reduce the noise around you, something unexpected happens. At first, silence can feel uncomfortable. Without a phone demanding your attention, a conversation filling the room, or a stream of entertainment occupying your thoughts, you are left alone with your own mind. For many people, that is exactly what they have been avoiding. But silence is not an empty space. Used deliberately, it becomes a place where you can think clearly. Modern life makes constant stimulation remarkably easy. There is always another message to answer, another video to watch, another opinion to consume, another piece of information waiting to enter your mind. Eventually, you can become so accustomed to noise that quiet feels strange. You may even mistake constant stimulation for productivity. It is not. You need moments when nothing is competing for your attention. Start small. Take a walk without reaching for your phone. Sit somewhere quiet for 10 minutes. Eat one meal without watching something. Spend a few minutes in the morning before allowing the outside world to enter your mind. You do not need an elaborate retreat. You simply need enough space to hear your own thoughts. At first, those thoughts may not be pleasant. You might notice anxiety you have been distracting yourself from. You might realize that a goal you have been chasing was chosen mainly because it looked impressive. You might recognize that you are tired, resentful, uncertain, or afraid. Do not immediately push those feelings away. Observe them. Silence gives you an opportunity to separate what you genuinely want from what you have absorbed from other people. It allows you to ask better questions. Why does this goal matter? What am I actually trying to prove? If nobody knew about this achievement, would I still want it? What kind of person am I becoming through the pursuit? Those questions can change the direction of your life. Silence also improves the quality of your decisions. When you constantly react to incoming information, you rarely give your own judgment enough time to develop. You see an opinion and respond. You hear criticism and become defensive. You encounter an opportunity and rush toward it. Quiet creates a pause between stimulus and response. Use that pause. Before making an important decision, step away from the noise. Write down what you know. Identify what you do not know. Consider the consequences. Ask whether the decision supports your larger priorities or simply satisfies an immediate emotion. You do not need to become withdrawn. You need to become deliberate. There is a difference between isolation and solitude. Isolation disconnects you from life. Solitude reconnects you with yourself so you can return to life with greater clarity. Use silence as training. When you can sit with boredom without immediately escaping, you strengthen patience. When you can sit with uncertainty without demanding an instant answer, you strengthen emotional control. When you can think without constantly consuming someone else's thoughts, you strengthen independent judgment. And eventually, clarity creates a new responsibility. Once you know what matters, you cannot keep hiding behind confusion. You have to act. Silence can show you the direction, but it cannot walk the road for you. The next challenge is therefore harder, taking what you discovered in quiet moments and turning it into consistent action, especially on the days when nobody is watching. Chapter 5. Keep your promise when nobody is watching. Clarity is valuable, but clarity alone does not change your life. You can know exactly what you want, understand why it matters, and still remain where you are if you do not act consistently. Eventually, every private realization has to become a public behavior, even if nobody else ever sees it. This is where discipline begins. Discipline is often portrayed as something dramatic: waking before sunrise, working for hours without stopping, refusing every temptation, or forcing yourself through exhaustion. Real discipline is usually much less impressive. It appears in ordinary decisions that nobody celebrates. You start when you said you would start. You finish what you committed to finish. You return to the task after yesterday did not go well. The important part is not how impressive the action looks. It is whether you can rely on yourself. Consider a promise you made privately. Perhaps you decided to read every evening, practice a skill, exercise consistently, work on a personal project, or spend less time distracted. At the beginning, the decision feels easy because motivation is fresh. Then comes the evening when you are tired. The task suddenly feels unnecessary. Nobody knows whether you complete it. Nobody will ask tomorrow. That moment matters more than you think. When nobody is watching, you discover whether your commitment belongs to your identity or merely to your mood. You do not need to be perfect. You need to become someone who returns. Missing one day does not erase discipline. Turning one missed day into a permanent retreat does. If you fall behind, restart quickly. Do not waste additional time punishing yourself for what already happened. Build the habit of keeping small promises. If you say you will work for 30 minutes, work for 30 minutes. If 30 minutes becomes impossible on a difficult day, establish a smaller minimum rather than abandoning the commitment entirely. The objective is to strengthen the relationship between your decisions and your behavior. Every time you follow through, you send yourself a message. I can trust myself. That trust is powerful. People often search for confidence before taking action. In reality, confidence frequently arrives afterward. You do something difficult, survive the discomfort, and discover that you were capable of doing it. Then you repeat the experience. Slowly, your self-image changes because your behavior has given it new evidence. Do not wait until you feel disciplined to behave like a disciplined person. Act first. Your environment matters too. Make the desired behavior easier to begin. Prepare what you need beforehand. Decide when the work will happen. Remove unnecessary obstacles. If you have to negotiate with yourself every time, you will eventually lose some of those negotiations. And remember why you are doing this privately. You are not trying to impress an audience. You are building a relationship with yourself that does not depend on applause. There is a special kind of strength that develops when you can work hard without anyone knowing, continue without encouragement, and finish without receiving recognition. That strength cannot be borrowed. It has to be earned through repetition. But there is another problem waiting ahead. Even strong discipline becomes unreliable when it depends entirely on how you feel each morning. Some days you will be energized, other days you will be distracted, tired, or completely uninterested. That is why the next step is not simply to become more motivated. It is to build a system that keeps you moving when motivation disappears. Chapter 6. Build systems that outlast motivation. Motivation feels powerful because it makes difficult work seem easier. When you are excited about a new goal, discipline appears almost effortless. You wake up with energy, imagine the future, and believe you can maintain that feeling indefinitely. Then, an ordinary week arrives. You become tired, the work becomes repetitive, progress slows down. Suddenly, the enthusiasm that seemed so reliable is nowhere to be found. This is where many goals quietly disappear. The mistake is expecting motivation to carry a long journey. Motivation can help you begin, but it is too unpredictable to become the foundation of your progress. If your behavior depends on feeling inspired, your consistency will always be vulnerable to your emotions. The better approach is to build systems. A system is simply a structure that makes the desired action easier to repeat. Instead of asking yourself every day whether you feel like doing the work, you decide beforehand when, where, and how the work will happen. That small change removes unnecessary negotiation. Suppose you want to read more. Do not merely promise yourself that you will read regularly. Choose a specific time, keep the book within reach, and make reading the default activity during that period. If you want to develop a skill, establish a recurring practice session. If you are building a project, create a fixed block of time dedicated to it. The objective is to turn intention into routine. Your environment can become part of the system as well. Make good decisions easier to start and bad decisions slightly harder to reach. Keep useful tools accessible. Remove unnecessary distractions before beginning important work. Prepare the night before if mornings are difficult. Reduce the number of choices you must make when your energy is low. Do not rely on willpower for tasks that can be solved through preparation. There is another important principle. Create a minimum standard. Some days will go perfectly. You will have energy, time, and concentration. Other days will be chaotic. If your standard requires perfection, one difficult day can break the entire routine. Instead, decide what the smallest acceptable action looks like. Maybe you cannot complete an entire workout, but you can move for 10 minutes. Maybe you cannot study for 2 hours, but you can review one important concept. Maybe you cannot finish the project, but you can work on it for 20 focused minutes. A minimum standard keeps the chain alive. This does not mean settling for less forever. It means protecting consistency during temporary difficulty. Once the difficult period passes, you can increase the workload again. Track behavior rather than emotion. You do not need to record how motivated you felt. Record whether you showed up. Over time, the record becomes evidence that your identity is changing. And remember that systems are not prisons. They are frameworks. If something stops working, adjust it. A useful system should support your life, not make you feel trapped by an unrealistic schedule. The deeper purpose is freedom. When your important actions become structured, you spend less mental energy deciding whether to act. You can reserve that energy for solving problems, improving your skills, and making better decisions. Eventually, consistency begins to replace excitement as your source of progress. You stop waiting for the perfect mood. You simply begin. And as your system quietly produces results, another temptation appears. The urge to tell everyone about the new discipline you have developed. Resist it. The next stage is learning to let your behavior speak louder than your announcements. Chapter 7. Stop explaining and start proving. Once you have built a routine that keeps you moving, a new temptation can appear. You may want people to know that you have changed. You want to tell them about the new schedule, the new habits, the new project, or the new standards you are following. After all, if something matters to you, why not talk about it? Because talking can become another form of distraction. There is a subtle difference between communicating something useful and repeatedly announcing an identity you have not yet fully developed. Saying, "I am becoming disciplined," is easy. Living with discipline when the day becomes inconvenient is much harder. Saying, "I am building something important," takes seconds. Sitting alone for months doing the unglamorous work requires a different kind of commitment. That is why actions are more valuable than declarations. You do not need to convince people that you are changing. You need to create evidence that you are changing. Think about the difference between making a promise and keeping one. A promise describes a future possibility. A completed action proves that you followed through. The second carries more weight because it required effort. Start applying that principle to your goals. Instead of telling everyone you are becoming more focused, protect your working hours. Instead of announcing that you are becoming healthier, change what you repeatedly do. Instead of explaining that you are learning a new skill, practice it. Instead of discussing how serious you are about your future, use your time accordingly. Let your calendar become more honest than your words. There is nothing wrong with sharing progress when it serves a purpose. You may need to communicate with a team, ask for help, teach something you have learned, or celebrate an important milestone. The problem is not speaking. The problem is using words to create an impression of progress that your actions have not earned. This is where silent work becomes powerful. When you stop explaining every move, you create room for uncertainty. You can change your strategy without worrying about what people will think. You can abandon an approach that is not working without having to defend it. You can experiment without turning every attempt into a public commitment. That freedom matters because meaningful work rarely follows a perfectly straight line. You will discover that some ideas are wrong, some routines will fail, some goals will change, some plans will need to be rebuilt completely. If you have announced every detail, adjustment can feel like embarrassment. If you have kept the process relatively private, adjustment becomes normal. Treat your plan as a working document, not a public contract. There is another benefit to letting results speak. You begin developing internal confidence. Instead of receiving confidence from other people's reactions, you collect it through your own behavior. You finished the difficult task. You kept the routine. You returned after failure. You stayed focused when nobody was checking. Those moments become private evidence. Over time, you may notice that you no longer feel the same urge to explain yourself. You become less interested in proving that you are serious because your daily behavior already demonstrates it. That is a meaningful shift. But there is one final challenge. When you stop seeking attention and stop announcing your progress, you may also stop receiving immediate recognition. That can feel strangely empty at first. The next lesson is learning how to keep moving when the work is producing results that nobody else can see yet. Chapter 8. Delay the applause and keep moving. When you stop announcing your progress, something changes. The work becomes quieter. There are fewer compliments, fewer questions, and fewer moments when someone tells you that you are doing well. At first, that silence can feel disappointing. You may wonder whether your effort matters when nobody seems to notice it. This is where you learn one of the most valuable forms of discipline, continuing without immediate recognition. Most people naturally enjoy being acknowledged. A completed task feels better when someone notices it. A difficult achievement feels more satisfying when others celebrate it. There is nothing wrong with that. Recognition is part of being human. The problem begins when recognition becomes necessary for continued effort. If you need applause to keep going, you have given other people control over your motivation. Take that control back. Learn to separate the value of your work from the attention it receives. A skill can improve even when nobody compliments you. A habit can strengthen even when nobody knows you are practicing it. A project can become better during months when almost no one sees it. Invisible progress is still progress. Think about anything that grows slowly. A language becomes more natural through repeated practice. Strength develops through consistent training. Knowledge accumulates through reading and study. Character develops through decisions made under pressure. None of these transformations requires daily applause. Your job is to keep adding effort. This is also where delayed gratification becomes important. You have to become comfortable exchanging a small reward today for a more meaningful result later. Sometimes that means choosing practice over entertainment. Sometimes it means saving your energy for something important instead of spending it trying to impress people. Sometimes it means accepting that the work you are doing now may not produce visible results for a long time. Do not confuse a quiet season with a wasted season. Some of the most important stages of growth are difficult to measure from the outside. You may be learning, adjusting, developing patience, building competence, or recovering from mistakes. Nothing dramatic may appear to be happening, yet your foundation is becoming stronger. Measure the right things. Instead of asking, "Did anyone notice?" ask, "Did I improve?" Instead of asking, "Did people praise me?" ask, "Did I keep my commitment?" Instead of asking, "Does everyone see my progress?" ask, "Am I further ahead than I was before?" These questions return your attention to what you can control. There will also be moments when recognition arrives unexpectedly. Someone notices the change. A result finally becomes visible. An opportunity appears because of the work you did quietly. Enjoy those moments, but do not become dependent on them. Recognition should be a pleasant consequence, not the engine. The ability to work without being noticed gives you freedom. You can focus on quality instead of appearance. You can improve without worrying about whether the process looks impressive. You can take longer when necessary because you are no longer racing to satisfy an audience. Eventually, this changes your relationship with success. You stop needing every step to feel rewarding. You become willing to do things that matter, even when they are boring, difficult, or invisible. That willingness separates long-term builders from people who constantly need stimulation. But as you become less dependent on praise, another challenge will appear. People may begin to question what you are doing. Some will offer useful criticism. Others will project their own fears onto your choices. You cannot listen to every voice. The next step is learning how to filter opinions without allowing criticism to control your direction. Chapter 9. Filter opinions and protect your energy. The quieter you become about your goals, the more clearly you begin to hear other people's opinions. Some will encourage you, some will question your decisions. Others may tell you that your plans are unrealistic, unnecessary, or too ambitious. If you are not careful, every comment can become another voice inside your head. This is where you need discernment. You do not have to reject criticism simply because it is uncomfortable. In fact, useful criticism can save you from mistakes you might not see yourself. The real skill is learning to separate information from interference. Before accepting someone's opinion, pause and examine it. Does this person understand what you are trying to accomplish? Do they have relevant experience? Are they pointing to something specific that you can actually evaluate? Are they offering an observation or simply describing their own fears? Those questions create distance between what someone says and what you choose to believe. Imagine you are navigating unfamiliar territory. Someone standing nearby points toward a different road and tells you that your route is wrong. You would not automatically change direction just because they spoke confidently. You would want to know whether they had actually traveled the road, understood the destination, and had evidence for their warning. Treat opinions the same way. Confidence in someone's voice is not proof that their conclusion is correct. There are people who criticize because they genuinely care. Their feedback may be uncomfortable, but it can make your strategy stronger. Listen to them, ask questions, look for what you can learn. Being committed to your goal does not require being blind to your weaknesses. Then there are people who criticize because your choices make them uncomfortable. Your discipline may remind them of what they have postponed. Your ambition may challenge their assumptions. Your boundaries may feel like rejection. Your willingness to change may make them question why they have stayed the same. Their reaction belongs to them. You do not have to carry it. One of the most exhausting mistakes you can make is trying to prove yourself to every person who doubts you. You explain your decisions, defend your plans, argue about your priorities, and spend hours attempting to change someone's opinion. By the end of the conversation, you may have gained nothing except less energy for the work itself. Choose your battles carefully. Sometimes the most productive response to criticism is improvement. Sometimes it is a calm explanation, and sometimes it is silence followed by continued action. You can respect someone without obeying them. You can listen without agreeing. You can consider feedback without surrendering your direction. This is especially important when pursuing something that takes time. Long-term goals often look unreasonable during their early stages because the evidence is still incomplete. Other people see the current version of your situation. You are trying to build the future version. That does not mean every dream is automatically correct. It means you need enough patience to evaluate your direction based on evidence rather than emotional reactions. Build your own decision-making process. Gather information, test assumptions, review results, seek advice from people with genuine expertise. Then make your decision and accept responsibility for it. Do not outsource your judgment. Protecting your energy also means controlling how much access people have to your unfinished plans. You do not owe everyone a detailed explanation of what you are working toward. Some information becomes more useful when shared at the right time, with the right person, for the right reason. As you become more selective, you may notice something else. Your growth can make people uncomfortable, even when you are not trying to challenge them. You may change your routines, become more disciplined, say no more often, spend less time available for distractions, choose different priorities. And suddenly, someone asks, "Why are you acting so differently?" That question leads to the next stage of the journey. You must learn how to keep moving when people do not understand the person you are becoming. Chapter 10. Stand firm. When others misunderstand you. Growth does not always look impressive from the outside. Sometimes it looks strange. You become more selective with your time. You stop participating in conversations that drain you. You decline invitations you once accepted automatically. You become serious about routines that used to seem unnecessary. You may even become quieter because you have discovered that constant explanation is exhausting. And eventually, someone notices. They may ask why you have changed. They may joke about your new habits. They may tell you that you are taking things too seriously. They may wonder why you are no longer as available as before. This is one of the less discussed costs of personal growth. People can become attached to the version of you they already understand. When you change, their expectations do not necessarily change at the same speed. That does not mean they are bad people. Sometimes they simply remember you through old patterns. If you were always available, they may not understand your new boundaries. If you once complained about having no time but spent hours distracted, your new discipline may seem unusual. If you previously explained every decision, your new privacy may feel distant. You cannot build your future while constantly trying to make your past understandable to everyone. This does not mean ignoring people you love or treating every disagreement as proof that you are evolving. Healthy relationships require communication, humility, and consideration. You should be willing to hear when your behavior genuinely hurts someone or when your priorities have become unreasonable. The challenge is learning the difference between being accountable and being controlled. Accountability asks you to examine your behavior. Control demands that you abandon your direction simply because someone dislikes it. Know the difference. When someone questions your choices, resist the immediate urge to defend yourself. Listen first. Ask yourself whether there is something valuable hidden inside the criticism. If there is, make the adjustment. If there is not, you do not need to turn the disagreement into a battle. Sometimes you can simply say, "I understand why you see it differently," and continue. You do not need unanimous approval to make a responsible decision. There will be seasons when your priorities become difficult to explain because the results have not appeared yet. You may be spending less time socializing because you are building something. You may be learning instead of entertaining yourself. You may be choosing patience while everyone around you wants immediate results. From the outside, this can look like nothing. Inside, everything may be changing. Learn to tolerate that gap. You are not required to prove the value of every sacrifice while you are making it. Some decisions only become understandable after the outcome becomes visible. But be careful not to turn "nobody understands me" into an excuse for arrogance. Being misunderstood does not automatically mean you are right. The goal is not to become so stubborn that no one can reach you. The goal is to become grounded enough to evaluate feedback without losing yourself. Keep your mind open and your direction steady. You may discover that some people eventually understand. Others may not. Both outcomes are acceptable. Your responsibility is not to force everyone to interpret your journey correctly. Your responsibility is to live it well. And then comes an even greater test. Even after you stop depending on other people's approval, there is one person whose judgment can still shake you deeply: yourself. When your plan fails, when progress disappears, or when an effort produces the wrong result, doubt can become louder than any outside criticism. That is why the next step is learning to turn failure into training instead of treating it as a verdict on who you are. Chapter 11. Turn failure into private training. There comes a moment when discipline, focus, and careful planning are no longer enough to guarantee the result you wanted. You can prepare seriously, follow your routine, protect your attention, and still fail. The opportunity disappears. The project does not work. The decision produces consequences you did not expect. The goal takes far longer than you imagined. This is where your relationship with failure becomes important. Failure can either become a teacher or become an identity. The difference is how you interpret it. When something goes wrong, the easiest reaction is emotional. You may think, "I am not good enough. I always ruin things," or "maybe I was never capable of doing this." Those statements turn one disappointing outcome into a judgment about your entire character. Stop there. A result is information. It is not a complete description of you. Instead of asking, "Why am I such a failure?" ask better questions. What specifically went wrong? Which part of the plan failed? What did I assume that turned out to be incorrect? What did I underestimate? Which skill was missing? What warning sign did I ignore? What would I do differently if I had to attempt the same thing tomorrow? These questions move you from shame toward learning. Imagine an engineer testing a machine that does not work. The engineer does not stare at the machine and declare, "I am a terrible engineer." They inspect the system. They identify the weak point. They change the design. They test again. Treat your setbacks with the same curiosity. This does not mean pretending failure does not hurt. It can hurt deeply. You may need time to acknowledge disappointment, frustration, embarrassment, or loss. Emotional honesty is not weakness. But feeling disappointed and concluding that you should quit are two different decisions. Give yourself permission to feel the setback without allowing it to make the decision for you. There is also value in keeping certain failures private while you process them. You do not need to turn every difficult moment into a public announcement. When you immediately tell everyone that your plan failed, you can become surrounded by sympathy, opinions, predictions, and advice before you have even understood what happened. Sometimes you need quiet before you need commentary. Step away, review the situation, write down the facts, separate what you can control from what you cannot, then decide what needs to change. Maybe the goal needs a new strategy. Maybe the timeline was unrealistic. Maybe you need another skill. Maybe you chose the wrong environment. Maybe the goal itself needs to be reconsidered. Changing the method is not the same as abandoning the mission. One failed attempt should not automatically receive the authority to define the final outcome. The most resilient people are not people who never fail. They are people who become difficult to permanently discourage because every setback gives them something to work with. Use failure to sharpen your judgment. Let it expose weak habits. Let it reveal missing skills. Let it teach patience. Let it make your next attempt more intelligent than your last. And avoid another trap, becoming obsessed with proving that the failure was someone else's fault. Sometimes circumstances genuinely work against you. Sometimes another person's decision creates the problem. But if you focus only on blame, you surrender the opportunity to improve what remains within your control. Ask the more useful question, what can I do now? That question brings your power back. Over time, private recovery creates a different kind of confidence. You stop believing that confidence means everything will work. You begin understanding that confidence means you can respond when things do not work. That is stronger. But repeated setbacks reveal an even deeper lesson. Your goal may require more than better strategies. It may require you to become a different kind of person, more patient, more disciplined, more adaptable, and more emotionally steady. That is the next stage. Stop asking only how to reach the goal. Start asking who you must become to carry it. Chapter 12. Become strong enough to carry the goal. At some point, you have to stop looking at your goal as something sitting in the distance and start looking at it as a demand placed on the person you are today. A bigger life requires more than desire. It requires the capacity to handle the responsibilities, pressure, uncertainty, and repetition that come with it. That changes the question. Instead of asking, how can I get what I want? Ask, who would I have to become to handle it well? This question moves the focus from the destination to the person making the journey. Imagine someone wanting to lead a successful organization while refusing to learn how to make difficult decisions. Imagine someone wanting greater freedom while remaining unable to control their impulses. Imagine someone wanting meaningful achievement while constantly abandoning projects whenever the excitement disappears. The goal is not necessarily the problem. The gap between the goal and the current version of the person may be the real challenge. Your ambitions often reveal the qualities you need to develop. If your goal requires patience, train yourself to tolerate slow progress. If it requires consistency, stop relying on occasional bursts of effort. If it requires courage, practice acting while uncertainty is still present. If it requires responsibility, stop searching for someone else to blame when circumstances become difficult. Do not wait for the future to force these qualities out of you. Build them deliberately now. Start with your standards. A standard is different from a wish. A wish says, I hope I become more disciplined. A standard says, this is how I behave, even when I do not feel like it. Standards create boundaries around your behavior. They tell you what you will and will not repeatedly accept from yourself. Raise those standards carefully. Do not create impossible rules that collapse after one difficult week. Choose standards you can actually practice. Keep your commitments. Finish important tasks. Tell yourself the truth. Correct mistakes quickly. Protect your attention. Make decisions that your future self will respect. Then examine your reactions. Your character is often revealed less by what happens and more by what you do after it happens. When someone criticizes you, do you immediately become defensive? When progress slows, do you quit? When you make a mistake, do you hide it or learn from it? When temptation appears, can you delay a short-term reward for something more meaningful later? These moments are training opportunities. You do not need dramatic challenges to build a stronger identity. Ordinary life provides enough resistance. A difficult conversation can train emotional control. A delayed result can train patience. A boring routine can train consistency. A disappointing outcome can train resilience. Use what is already happening. Another important shift is to stop romanticizing the person you want to become. The future version of you will not be perfect. They will still experience frustration, uncertainty, tiredness, and fear. The difference is that those emotions will not automatically determine their behavior. You are not trying to eliminate weakness. You are learning to stop allowing weakness to run the entire operation. This is why private work matters. Much of identity transformation happens before anyone notices. Every time you choose the harder right action over the easier escape, you are reinforcing a new version of yourself. Eventually, the goal becomes less frightening because you are no longer approaching it as the same person who first imagined it. You have trained, you have adapted, you have developed evidence that you can handle more than you once believed. Now the task is to continue building that strength without becoming distracted by whether anyone else can see it. Because the deepest transformation often happens before there is anything impressive to show. The next chapter is about staying in that quiet construction phase long enough for invisible effort to become visible results. Chapter 13. Build in private until your progress becomes visible. By now, you have changed the way you approach your goals. You stopped giving every ambition to an audience. You learned to rely less on approval, protect your attention, create quiet space for thought, practice discipline, build systems, ignore unnecessary noise, accept criticism intelligently, and recover from failure without allowing it to define you. Now comes the part that tests whether those lessons have become real. Keep going. Not for another few days, not until someone notices. Keep going long enough for the small things you have been practicing to begin changing the larger picture. Most meaningful transformation is difficult to recognize while it is happening. When you are improving a skill, the difference between 1 week and the next may seem almost invisible. When you are becoming more disciplined, there may be no dramatic moment when you suddenly feel like a completely different person. When you are rebuilding your confidence, the change may appear as nothing more than a series of small decisions that you handled differently. That is how real progress often works. It accumulates quietly. Think about a wall being built one brick at a time. If you stare at one brick, it does not look significant. But continue placing them in the right position, day after day, and eventually you are standing beside something solid. Your habits work the same way. One focused hour does not transform your life. One healthy decision does not create a new identity. One difficult conversation does not make you emotionally mature. But repeated actions begin to create patterns, and patterns eventually shape your character. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Intensity feels impressive because it creates a visible burst of effort. Consistency is quieter. It asks you to return when yesterday's excitement is gone. It asks you to continue when the results are delayed. It asks you to perform ordinary actions with unusual patience. Do not underestimate ordinary repetition. There may be periods when you wonder whether anything is changing. You may compare yourself with people who appear to be moving faster. You may see someone else announce an achievement while your own work remains private and unfinished. Resist the comparison. You rarely see the full process behind someone else's visible result. You see the finished photograph, not the thousands of ordinary moments that came before it. Stay with your process. Review your direction occasionally. Measure what has improved. Identify what still needs work. Adjust your methods when the evidence tells you to. Quiet work does not mean mindless repetition. It means giving yourself enough uninterrupted time to build without constantly performing the process for others. There is also a point where privacy becomes less about hiding and more about freedom. You no longer feel compelled to tell people what you are doing because you are busy doing it. Your attention has moved from appearance to substance. You are less concerned with looking disciplined and more concerned with actually becoming disciplined. That is a significant shift. Eventually, people may notice. They may comment on how different you seem. They may ask what changed. Your results may create opportunities that were not available before. Your behavior may communicate a level of confidence that words could never produce. When that happens, remember where it came from. It came from the mornings nobody saw, the decisions nobody applauded, the failures you studied instead of dramatized, the distractions you rejected, the promises you kept privately, the days when you continued simply because you had decided to continue. You were building before there was evidence. Now the evidence is beginning to appear, and when it does, you will face the final lesson. You no longer need to announce the person you are becoming because the results have started introducing you. Chapter 14. Let your results speak for you. At the beginning of this journey, the temptation was to announce the destination. You wanted people to know what you were planning, what you were changing, and what you hoped to accomplish. But after everything you have practiced, something has shifted. You have discovered that there is a difference between being noticed and making progress. Now the work has become the message. Your habits say something about you. Your decisions say something about you. The way you respond when things go wrong says something about you. The skills you have developed, the commitments you have kept, and the distractions you have learned to reject all communicate more than an announcement ever could. This is the power of results. Results do not need a long explanation. They create their own evidence. If you become more capable, people eventually notice. If you become more reliable, people begin trusting you with greater responsibility. If you build something useful, its value becomes visible through what it produces. If you become more disciplined, your behavior starts telling the story without requiring a speech. You no longer need to convince everyone. That does not mean you should hide every achievement. There is nothing wrong with celebrating progress, sharing useful lessons, thanking people who helped you, or allowing your work to be seen. The difference is your reason for sharing. Share because it serves something meaningful, not because you need strangers to confirm that you matter. That distinction protects you from another trap, becoming addicted to visibility. Once people begin noticing your progress, attention can become tempting. You may start optimizing your life for what looks impressive rather than what actually matters. You may spend more time documenting the journey than living it. You may begin making decisions because they will produce admiration instead of because they are aligned with your values. Do not trade one distraction for another. Recognition can be useful, but it should remain a consequence rather than a command. Remember the private foundation that created the visible result. The goal was never to become mysterious. The goal was to become focused enough that your energy went toward execution rather than constant explanation. You learned to keep certain ambitions close because unfinished ideas need room to develop. You learn to work without applause because progress does not always arrive with immediate recognition. You learn to filter criticism because not every opinion deserves equal weight. You learn to recover from failure because one bad outcome cannot define a long journey. You learn to strengthen yourself because a larger goal requires a stronger person to carry it. Now bring those lessons together. Keep your goals private when privacy protects your concentration. Speak when communication creates value. Ask for help when help is genuinely needed. Accept feedback when it can make your work better. Celebrate when celebration is deserved. But never confuse attention with achievement. A person can be widely noticed and still be moving nowhere. Another person can be almost invisible while building something extraordinary. Choose substance over appearance. Your greatest victory may not be the moment other people finally recognize you. It may be the moment you realize that you no longer need their recognition to continue. That is freedom. You can work quietly without feeling forgotten. You can make progress without announcing it. You can change direction without embarrassment. You can fail without believing you are finished. You can succeed without needing to turn success into a performance. Let your results speak because they represent something deeper than a promise. They represent repetition. They represent patience. They represent decisions made when nobody was watching. So do not rush to explain what you are becoming. Keep building, keep refining, keep showing up. And when your work finally becomes impossible to ignore, let people discover the answer for themselves. You were not talking about becoming different. You were becoming different. Conclusion: build quietly and become impossible to ignore. There is nothing magical about keeping your goals private. The real power comes from what privacy allows you to practice: concentration, patience, discipline, self-trust, and honest improvement. You do not need to disappear from the world. You simply need to stop giving every unfinished idea to the world for evaluation. Some ambitions need time before they need attention. Some plans become stronger when they are allowed to change without an audience watching every adjustment. Throughout this journey, the message has remained simple. Move your energy from explaining to executing. Protect your attention because distraction can consume the very time your future requires. Step into silence because constant noise can make it difficult to recognize what you genuinely want. Build systems because motivation will not always arrive when you need it. Keep your promises because self-trust is created through repeated action. Filter opinions because not every voice deserves a place in your decision-making. Accept failure because setbacks can reveal weaknesses that success often hides. And above all, become comfortable working without applause. There will be days when nobody notices your effort. There will be periods when your progress feels painfully slow. There may be moments when people question your choices or misunderstand why you have changed. Keep going. You are not required to make every stage of your development understandable to everyone else. Let your life become the evidence. The person you are becoming will be shaped by the choices you make when there is no audience, no reward, and no immediate proof that the effort is working. Those quiet decisions eventually become habits. Habits become character. Character influences results. That is how silent progress becomes visible. When recognition finally arrives, receive it without becoming dependent on it. Celebrate what you accomplished, appreciate the people who genuinely helped, and then return to the work. Your identity should not depend on being admired. The goal was never to become invisible. The goal was to become so focused on meaningful action that visibility stopped being the reason you acted. So keep some dreams close. Give important plans room to develop. Work when nobody is watching. Correct yourself when you are wrong. Start again when you fail. Protect your attention. Strengthen your discipline. and stop measuring your progress by how loudly the world responds. You do not have to announce every step toward your future. Build it. When the time is right, your results will introduce you more clearly than your words ever could. Stay quiet when quiet protects the mission. Speak when speaking creates value. But always remember the central principle. Do not spend your life describing the person you want to become. Spend it becoming that person.